explores the beginning of the girl's pain and the moment her world narrows into shame and silence. She lives in a house where love is conditional and laughter is sharp. Her brother is louder than everyone else and he learns early that cruelty earns attention. He mocks her body in front of family and strangers, turning meals into stages and rooms into cages. Each laugh teaches her that existing is something to apologize for. She does not fight back because fighting would mean hoping, and hope has already failed her many times. She learns to stay still, to speak softly, and to shrink even when shrinking hurts. Her brother's words follow her into sleep and into mirrors and into every choice she makes. The family never corrects him. Their silence becomes agreement and agreement becomes law. In this place her worth is measured only by how little trouble she causes. The insult that defines her arrives casually during an ordinary day. Her brother says no man would want you in the room, accepts it as truth. The sentence lands heavier than fists because it sounds final. She feels herself disappear in that moment, not physically but inwardly, as if a door closes and locks behind her. She understands that she is no longer a person to them but a burden to be passed along. This belief settles into her bones and reshapes how she stands and breathes and dreams. She stops imagining a future and starts imagining escape, not freedom but distance. When a man appears willing to take her hand, the decision is made without her voice. The family treats it like relief, like a problem solved quickly and cheaply. She is not asked what she feels because feelings are considered luxury. She agrees because refusing would mean staying, and staying would mean enduring more laughter, more reminders, more nights of wishing she could disappear. Acceptance becomes survival. The choice is framed as generosity toward her, as if someone is saving her from herself. This manipulation is quiet and therefore powerful. Inside her there is a storm she cannot name: fear, shame, anger, and a faint spark of dignity clash without words. She wonders if the man will see her the way her brother does, or if he will simply look through her. She prepares herself for indifference because indifference feels safer than cruelty. On the outside she appears calm, obedient, almost grateful. On the inside she is grieving the life she was never allowed to imagine. Part 1 ends with her leaving the house, not as a bride but as a shadow, carrying years of unspoken pain and a fragile hope that somewhere beyond laughter she might finally be allowed to exist. Her steps are slow but steady as she crosses the threshold, feeling both terror and relief. The road ahead is unknown, yet the house behind her is known too well. She carries habits of silence like heavy clothing and expects judgment in every glance. She believes love must be earned through obedience and endurance. This beginning is not about romance but about survival and the quiet moment before change takes shape. Even without promises she moves forward because remaining would erase her completely. In this fragile departure the story plants the seed of transformation, waiting for time, kindness, and choice to awaken it. That seed rests within her heart, untouched but alive, prepared to grow when conditions finally allow. Her journey begins here, shaped by pain yet moving toward dignity and the possibility of self-chosen worth that no laughter can destroy ever again. Shifts the story into unfamiliar ground where expectation and reality begin to separate. The man who agrees to the marriage is not what she imagined. He is not loud or boastful, and he does not look at her with hunger or disgust. He looks at her as if he is trying to understand a language he was never taught. His life has been shaped by loss and quiet work and long days where survival mattered more than dreams. He does not arrive as a savior, and he does not see himself as one. He agrees to the marriage because he knows what it means to be overlooked, and because loneliness has a sound he recognizes immediately. Their first days together are heavy with uncertainty. She waits for the insult that never comes. He waits for her to speak and learns she has been trained not to. They move through shared space carefully like strangers crossing a narrow bridge. Each small interaction feels loaded with history she carries and assumptions he is trying to avoid. He does not touch her without permission, and that alone unsettles her because it contradicts everything she has been taught to expect. She mistakes his restraint for disappointment and prepares herself for eventual rejection, even while part of her notices the gentleness in his actions. He offers food without commentary and listens without interrupting. He asks simple questions and accepts silence as an answer. He notices how she flinches at raised voices and how she apologizes for existing in doorways. These details matter to him, though he does not yet know why. He begins to understand that she has lived in a constant state of defense and that love for her will need to begin with safety. He does not rush because he knows pressure can feel like violence to someone who has never been given space. She studies him in return, looking for signs of cruelty. She finds none, only weariness and patience. She is confused by his lack of expectations and struggles with the idea that she might not have to earn her place beside him. At night she lies awake listening to the unfamiliar quiet and wonders if this calm is temporary or real. She tells herself not to hope because hope has hurt her before, yet hope begins to form anyway, quietly and without permission. The marriage remains a transaction in name, but something human begins to grow beneath it. He does not defend her publicly yet, but he does not allow disrespect in private. He challenges harmful remarks with calm clarity, and that steadiness unsettles those who expected compliance through him. She experiences a different kind of strength, one that does not require humiliation to assert itself. Part 2 is about tension and adjustment and the slow dismantling of fear. It is about two people learning how to exist beside each other without armor. The man who said yes does not offer grand gestures, but he offers consistency, and for her consistency feels revolutionary. The chapter closes with her realizing that for the first time in her life she is not being laughed at or traded or ignored. She is simply being allowed to be, and that permission changes everything even if she does not yet know how to use it. Unfolds in the quiet middle where change does not announce itself but slowly settles into the body and mind. She begins to notice how days no longer feel like trials to survive but spaces to move within. The man continues his steady ways, offering no speeches, no promises, only presence. He wakes early, works, returns, and asks how her day was without expecting performance. He accepts her answers whether they are words or nods or silence. This consistency begins to loosen something tight inside her chest. She realizes that she is not being watched for mistakes, and that realization is both comforting and frightening because she does not know who she is without fear guiding her steps. Old habits resist leaving. She still flinches when laughter rises nearby, still apologizes when nothing is wrong, still expects punishment after moments of ease. The man notices but does not correct her harshly. Instead he asks gentle questions that invite reflection rather than shame. Why do you think you need to say sorry? Who taught you that you take up too much space? These questions echo in her long after they are asked, and she begins to trace their answers back to her brother, to her family, to years of being reduced to a joke. She feels anger for the first time, not explosive but steady and clarifying anger that tells her something was taken from her and that it mattered. As weeks pass she starts to speak more, not loudly, not confidently, but honestly. She shares memories she never thought deserved air. The man listens without disbelief, without minimizing. He believes her, and belief feels like oxygen. Her voice grows stronger, not because she is changing for him but because she is finally heard. The house begins to feel like a place rather than a shelter. She rearranges small things, choosing where objects belong, deciding how rooms feel. These choices seem trivial, yet they mark the beginning of ownership of her life. The brother presence lingers through messages and visits where old dynamics try to reassert themselves. He laughs, expecting her to shrink again, but something has shifted. She does not laugh with him, nor does she disappear. She stands quietly beside her husband, or does not raise his voice, yet makes it clear that cruelty will not be entertained. The brother confusion is visible, and for the first time she sees him not as a giant but as a man dependent on dominance to feel whole. That realization weakens his power over her. Internally she begins the work of unlearning the lies carved into her identity. She challenges the belief that love must be earned through suffering. She experiments with rest, with pleasure, with saying no. Each act feels rebellious and risky but also deeply right. She starts to care for her body not as an enemy to control but as a companion that carried her through pain. The mirror becomes less of a battleground and more of a negotiation. She does not always like what she sees, but she no longer believes it deserves contempt. The man remains steady, neither pushing nor pulling, allowing her transformation to belong to her. They begin to laugh together, softly at first, then freely. Laughter no longer cuts but heals. Part 3 is about reclamation and the slow, brave act of believing oneself worthy without permission. The cruelty of the past loses its grip as she steps into a version of herself shaped not by mockery but by choice. The chapter closes with her realizing that survival has turned into living, and that this life, though imperfect, is finally her own to define and protect. Carries the weight of all that has been learned and brings the story to a place of choice rather than endurance. She is no longer moving only in reaction to others but in alignment with herself. The change is quiet yet undeniable. She walks differently, speaks without rehearsing apologies, and holds her ground without needing to explain. Her sense of worth no longer depends on who approves of her presence. It comes from the steady knowledge that she exists fully and that existence is enough. The marriage reaches a moment of truth when opportunity and pressure collide. Her family returns with expectations disguised as concern. They speak as if she is still something to be managed and corrected. Her brother attempts his old performance, laughing, pushing, testing the limits of the space she now occupies. This time the laughter does not wound, it sounds hollow to her, like a language she has outgrown. She feels sadness for him but no fear. The power dynamic has shifted, not because he has changed but because she has. She speaks calmly and clearly, setting boundaries without anger. She does not defend her body or her choices, she simply states them. This simplicity disarms those who expected emotion or compliance. The man beside her supports without overshadowing. He does not speak for her because she no longer needs translation. His respect is shown in restraint and trust. They are partners now, not by obligation but by shared ground. Later she reflects on what love means to her now. It is not rescue or sacrifice or tolerance, it is presence, honesty and the freedom to grow without being reduced. She realizes that even if the marriage had never deepened she would still have found her way here. The relationship did not create her worth, it gave her space to recognize it. That understanding brings peace rather than resentment. She chooses her future deliberately, whether that future includes motherhood or career or quiet days filled with small joys. It is hers to design. She no longer measures herself against expectations that were never fair. She invests time in friendships, learning how to receive care without suspicion. She allows herself pleasure without guilt and rest without justification. These choices accumulate into a life that feels solid and real. The man watches her transformation with admiration, not possession. He falls in love not with a version of her shaped by pain but with the woman she becomes through agency. Their connection deepens because it is rooted in equality. They choose each other daily, not out of fear of loneliness but out of mutual respect. Their love is steady and unremarkable in the best way. It does not demand proof, it simply exists. In the closing moments she returns to the memory of the laughter that once defined her. She sees it now as noise, not truth. She understands that cruelty often comes from emptiness and that her brother's words were reflections of his own limitations, not her value. This realization releases the final hold of shame. She forgives not to excuse but to free herself completely. Part 4 ends not with triumph but with clarity. She stands fully in her life, grounded and unafraid. Her story is no longer about being chosen by someone else, it is about choosing herself again and again. In doing so she reclaims every part that was dismissed, mocked or traded away. The seed planted in pain has grown into strength rooted in self-respect and compassion. The laughter fades into irrelevance and in its place stands a woman who knows her worth without needing to prove it to anyone ever again.